Hi, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with comics creator Jamal Igle. Jamal, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for saying yes, and thanks for taking a few minutes to talk comics and all of the creating things.
Oh, well, my favorite subject.
Yeah, this is good. This is a good match. Um, so I generally start out with sort of an origins question. I'm big
Mhm.
on literacy and literacy histories and things like that. So just curious about how you got on the path of comics and creating and visual storytelling.
Well, as a reader, it just sort of seemed like comics were always in my life. My father was a comic book fan. My mother was very encouraging, especially the reading part. And there just always seemed to be, I'm a child of the 70s. So
Mhm,
there
mhm.
always just seemed to be, comic book or spec fiction stuff everywhere on every channel, on billboards and everything. Probably, I I would arguably say probably as much as there are now, except it was back when I was a kid,
Yeah,
back in the 70s. We got a superhero movie what once every 5 years, as
maybe.
opposed to,
Yeah,
yeah, there was there was a long log between the first Superman and Batman movies.
that's true. Yeah.
So
And you looked forward to it and you looked at set
absolutely,
photos and all those things.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
and then we also had we had the Spider-Man newspaper strip, which I used to devour religiously, and then you had
Mhm.
Batman reruns on television. You had like stuff like Battlestar Galactica and Incredible Hulk, and even on
Yes.
Saturday morning you had stuff like Electro Woman and Dyna Girl. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Mhm,
at all.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So, so it just always seemed like comic books and superheroes were always around. And like I said, my mother was very encouraging as far as like getting me to read. So there was always like some kind of like comic book related thing going
Mhm.
on. When I was 5, my grandfather took me to see Superman the movie, and
Yeah, yeah.
that cemented it for me. I don't know if you can see over my shoulder at the Hot
I
Toys
can.
Christopher Reeve.
That was
Snatch
one of the
that,
first things I noticed. Yep.
yeah, then snatch that as soon as I saw what. Yes, it's the action figure I've been waiting for my entire life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So so that really just made it abundantly clear that that was, I don't know if it was my destiny, but it was definitely something that I became very, very intently focused on. And then on the creation side, kind of the same thing. Like I always drew.
Mhm, mhm.
I started drawing from a kid. I was one of those kids who, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I was making toys out of pipe cleaners and aluminum foil and old styrofoam packing crates and stuff like that. And then always in art programs, always doing like special projects in school up until 6th grade, and then gifted and talented, like
Nice, nice. Yeah.
and then I went to the High School of Art and Design, where was my first like real introduction to like the craft of comics. And around that time, I did my internship. I did a 6-month internship at DC Comics
Mhm,
in my
mhm.
the end of my junior year, beginning of my senior year of high school. So my the first 6 months of my senior year, I was going back and forth between school and DC's offices, the old
Yeah.
offices, which were on 666 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And after I left A&D, I went to the Art Students League. I went to the School of Visual Arts, where I'm a professor now. And you know, yeah, again, it was I was just always really, really focused on becoming a comic book creator.
Mhm, mhm.
Everything that I did up until that point, really, that was the ultimate end goal, was to be a full-time comics creator.
Yeah. But the relationship with DC continued from the
Oh yeah,
internship.
absolutely. From the internship, I got my first published work, not the first work that I did in the industry, but my first published work, which was issue of Green Lantern, 8 pages in an issue of Green Lantern,
Hmm.
Green
Hmm.
Lantern 52, right after they introduced Kyle Rayner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was my first published work, and my first regular monthly work, which was Firestorm at
Hmm.
DC.
Hmm.
And I ended up being on contract for 7 years and working Nightwing, Supergirl,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
World's Finest, and just a bunch of different projects over there.
Yeah.
And all, and even now, like, even with the bulk of my work being independent for the most part, I still pop over to DC and do like covers, or like stories, or little things that I can fit in, when the
Yeah.
time presents itself. But yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Um, and I was going to ask, I'm very Batman adjacent in
Mm.
all of the reading history that I have. So Nightwing is one of those characters and titles that stands out to me. But is there
Yeah.
one that sort of bubbles to the surface for you from either that time or since?
Wow, that is a really hard question. I mean, there are individual things that they've done that I've really, really enjoyed over years. I mean, I was a massive Firestorm fan before I got into the book. Same thing
Hmm.
with Nightwing. I had like complete runs of both series long before I worked on the books. So obviously, but it sounds weird, talking about your own work. There have been a lot of things that they've done. One of my favorite one shot stories that they did, um, was JLA JSA Virtue and Vice by
Hmm.
Jeff Johns and Carlos Pacheco.
Hmm.
And I just felt like I'm old school. I'm familiar with all the crises, and Crisis on Earth X, and Crisis, all the old JSA stories, and
Hmm. All the
uh,
events.
all the events. But I felt like that was Jeff's love letter at the
Yeah.
time to DC. And then you have the late Carlos Pacheco, who was brilliant then, continued to be even more brilliant. And his loss, it's still felt, because I just adored his work,
Hmm. Hmm.
and took the opportunity to tell him so, at one point. And he was very, very kind.
Yes.
um yeah, it is. But that's like one of my favorite stories that they've done. And there've been a few, if you look on my shelf, I've got like complete run of Starman on my shelf, Ex
Uh-huh.
Machina, Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's Batman and Robin, just a bunch of stuff. This is just a bunch of stuff. I'm a comic book fan even to this day, which seems to be, you know a rarity, unfortunately, with creators. I think a lot of that uh can come from just familiarity, just
Yeah.
having been in the business for a long time and not really, you know enjoying it for what it could be
Hmm.
as a creative outlet. I think you know how it is. When the thing that you love becomes your job, sometimes it's very hard to separate the two.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just kind of lucky, because I still love comics
Hmm. Hmm.
as a whole, and I still love superhero comics as a whole.
Yeah. You mentioned Carlos being particularly kind. Any other especially kind folks along the way that you would want to shout out, or upcoming talents,
Oh,
stepping into that teacher role a little bit too?
that that's that's hard to nail down because I have to be honest, like most of the people that I've had the opportunity to meet in comics have just been, some of the sweetest and most self-effacing
Mhm. Mhm.
people, ridiculously talented and in many cases very, very humble. But man, I mean, I'm just like it's it's hard, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Who's the kindest podcaster you've met? Sammy, Sammy.
It's
I'm,
you,
I'm just,
Jason. No,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. No.
oh
So what is it like stepping into that teacher role from the creating side of things?
well, I mean, it was the second time that I taught because I was an instructor at the Art Students League about 16 years ago, before my daughter was born, and I stepped away when my daughter was born because I just didn't no longer had the time to be a full-time comics creator and a teacher and a
Hmm.
dad and a new dad at the time. And it was a little bit daunting. I wasn't sure if I had the patience to be a teacher
Hmm.
anymore, because it had been so long. And even though I've done, workshops, and I've been to symposiums, and I've spoken at schools, into the intervening years, as it's a very different thing to be in a classroom with,
Hmm.
in my case, 16, sophomore college students, some of
Hmm.
whom there are really, this is their first real foray into learning the nuts and bolts of putting together a comic book page and understanding the mechanics behind sequential storytelling.
Yeah.
So and it ended up being a really, really good experience. So I'm looking forward to the fall.
Hmm.
My
Hmm.
class is full. It's going to be interesting. I got my sea legs under me now.
Nice,
I'm gonna
nice.
just walk into the room and just be like, I'm here to help, but I'm not an easy A. So
That's
I
good. That
expect
is
I
good.
expect a lot.
Well, hey, you're reflecting and you're holding high expectations. So, I mean, it sounds like you've got the craft. It
Oh
sounds
yeah,
like
well,
it.
I had to, and I don't want to say temper my expectations, uh, because it's probably the wrong word. I would say that because I hadn't been in a classroom situation, and especially going back to the college that I was a student at, and
Hmm.
having a very different perspective. Because when I was at SVA back in the early '90s, it was a much more cutthroat experience
Yeah,
than
yeah.
it is now. And college has there. I was one of the things I was very, very surprised by, but happily surprised by, was the collaborative spirit that these kids have, and the
Love it.
willingness to not just share but encourage each other,
Hmm.
which was wonderful to see. And really, really, like, the kids that I had in my class really stepped up to the plate for the most part.
Hmm.
I threw a lot at them, and the first semester was interesting because you could just see sort of like the deer in the headlights just kind of look on their faces half the time, like, what, we have to do all of that? Like,
Right,
yeah,
right.
you gotta, there's a lot involved in putting together a comic book, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. I knew it was labor intensive, but before I started doing these interviews in this show, I didn't realize all of the things. I didn't realize
Mm,
all of the pieces. I've learned a lot just in
yeah.
talking with folks on here and listening to someone say, "Yeah, I've redone the same page 12 times."
Well, I'm not that bad. I have had a couple of instances. I have my slush pile, which is basically like an old FedEx mailing box
Hmm.
where if I start a page and it isn't working out, instead of ripping it up, like sometimes I'll rip it up, but instead of ripping it up, I'll just shove it in there, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and move on, But my process in general is very methodical.
Hmm. Hmm.
So by the time I'm working on the finished page, I pretty much have 80% of what I want to do already worked out in the layout stage. So a lot of it really is just refinement and polish at
Hmm.
that point. For me, a lot of the real thinking goes on during the thumbnailing and the layout stage.
Yeah.
So it just sort of makes it easier for me in general.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. The benefit of experience and
Yeah,
getting
well,
that process.
I've been doing this since before dinosaurs roamed the earth now. So
Um, so I also like to ask about creative directions, next
mhm.
steps, spaces where people can connect, events, all of those sort of things.
Oh,
Any of those pieces that you'd like to share?
oh yeah. Well, let's see. Right now I am working on. I do a series with Ahoy Comics called The Wrong Earth. We've been doing it for about 5 years, and this is actually the company's fifth anniversary.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we've got a brand new 2-issue story coming out starting the end of October, Wednesday, October 25th, called The Wrong Earth. We Can Be Heroes, and it picks up uh, sometime after the events of the last our last full mini series, which was called Wrong Earth Night and Day,
Hmm.
and we find out what's been happening on Earth Alpha, which is the campy 60 70 ish universe of Dragonfly Man, one of our heroes.
Yes,
So
lots of fun.
yeah, so we catch up with the mayor, the bank president, and the chief of police as they struggle with a world turned topsy turvy as the villains have taken over
Hmm.
with the absence of Dragonfly Man and Stinger. So yeah, we're doing that. We got 2 issues. The second issue comes out in December. Uh, Deadly Datsun the Forever Machine, which is the series that I did with Scott Snyder for Comixology, should be coming out in print fairly soon. They haven't.
Hmm. Hmm.
It'll be in solicitations at some point. I know.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
exactly when yet, but soon. And let's see, conventions. So my next convention is Baltimore Comic Con.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, I think. Yes, that sounds yes, Baltimore Comic Con in September, New York Comic Con in October, and then in November I am doing the Twin Cities Con in Minnesota and Motor City Comic Con in
Nice.
Detroit, in Novi. So yeah, so that'll be that's my fall winter convention tour, and you can reach me. I am still on whatever X, Twitter, whatever. I'm
Hmm.
still
Hmm.
I'm still there. I'm on Blue Sky. If you're on Blue Sky, I know they're still rolling that out somewhat. I'm on Spoutable. I am on Facebook. One of these guys has got to win. I
Right,
mean,
right.
yeah,
I keep saying like signal flare, like
I
somebody's got to get one that just
I
you put it up
know.
and it shoots everywhere, and that
I
way
do
we're just done.
exactly. So I'm on Spoutable, I'm on Threads, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. Just type in Jamal Igle and you will find me.
Yeah, yeah. The last person I interviewed said that they were thinking about coming up with their own because why not at this point? So,
Everybody's. Here's the problem: is that you know the entertainment folks tend to migrate to these sites first. So
hmm.
they tend to populate the sites. So nobody has picked a winner.
Yeah,
Like they're trying to see how long it will take for Twitter to finally crater so that so everybody is forced to leave. So
hmm.
nobody's been really forced to leave. It's been sort of all voluntary. So once that happens, then the rest of the social media apps can battle it out for dominance,
That's
and
right. That's right.
whoever takes the head gets the quickening, as they say.
It's
So
social media Darwinism, which is
absolutely,
who knew that
absolutely.
would happen. So,
You know, then hopefully in the end there can be only one.
that's right. Yeah. I'm picturing now like a quickening,
I that's what I
all of the followers go to you with all of the
exactly,
powers. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Did we miss anything in the interview that you want to make sure to mention and to put out there? And love to Dragonfly Man as well, I have to say. I
Uh,
think I
uh,
caught that on like NetGalley when it was first coming out,
yeah.
and have enjoyed it since.
Thanks. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's they're my boys and girls, and it's one of my favorite things to work on in the world. It really is. No, I think we covered everything. I think we're good.
In a short form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jamal. It's a pleasure to share about your work, and I would be glad to talk with you again anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason.